set this up so that we would not have tyrannical accumulation of powers. But what has happened over time is we have sent so much power. In fact, we have brought up a generation to look to Washington, D.C. to solve our problems. I have a theory on that. I think it relates to the information flow and the advent of mass media. That if you can see it described in D.C., that's got to be the answer. That's my personal view. I can't empirically support that right now, but it's intuitively, if I ever had a chance to research it, I think you'd find something like that. But regardless of why it ended up that way, you know, we have increasingly looked to Washington, D.C. to solve our problems, and we have sent the power that way. We have not only sent too much power to Washington, D.C., we have increasingly put it in an unelected bureaucracy that we can't get at. That's a problem. So when I share with you where I think we are today, I mean, I think you know the data. We're at 9.6 unemployment, 9.6% unemployment. Now this is what? The stimulus was passed in February. And so what are we, 20 months or so from that, 20, 21 months from the stimulus? Unemployment's on the rise. So it didn't work. It didn't work. And you look at the other leading economic indicators. You look at housing sales, you look at gross domestic product. You can take your pick. The leading economic indicators are trending in the wrong direction. We've been using the wrong approach. We've been using the wrong approach. We've been using this DC-focused macroeconomic approach to trying to grow the economy. I believe that the way to grow the economy is from a microeconomic perspective. And if you want to know what's going on, you got to invest. You got to spend time and listen to people. You know, 137 towns, listen to small business owners all across our district, and they share with me. Because I asked them the question, are you going to grow? Are you going to expand this year? What about next year? Generally speaking, across our district, the answer is no. And the reason why, generally speaking, is because we have a hostile and uncertain environment to growth. Now, the businessmen and women have been joking with me lately. They say, look, we're used to hostile. This is New York. It's the uncertainty that's killing us. So, you know, it's hostile for primarily three reasons. One is taxes. Second is regulation. And third is healthcare costs. Those are the three things that just eat at the bottom line of profitability. And that's why when your supervisor laid that out there, it's crushing to hear it. Because there's a magnifying effect. When you have to deal with, you know, untold fold increases to your health care beyond inflation, which is negligible at this point, where's that coming from? That's absolutely coming from your bottom line. Where else could it come from? A business and a family can't sustain those kind of increases. You just can't. You know? And so our campaign's about addressing the problems. Not the symptoms, not the popular, but the problems. You know, and you look at the leadership right now, it's disappointing. It's disappointing. You know, a few nights ago, this Congress was supposed to be in session until about the 8th of October. And a few nights ago, so there was this move that said, well, let's head home. You know, let's get home because we need to campaign because our jobs are important. You know? So, and I want you to know that 39 Blue Dog Democrats sided with the Republicans and rejected that. They said, no budget. First time since 1974 we have no budget. We have no federal budget right now. No federal budget for the first time since 1974. If I ask you to raise your hands, I'll bet you every family in here's got a budget. It's common sense. We had one growing up. You know, even if you don't have a lot of money, you don't spend more than you have. That's pretty simple. No budget. Without a budget, there's no plan to create jobs. And there's no plan for fiscal responsibility. Not only no budget, there's 12 appropriations bills that are passed each year so the federal government can decide where the money's going to go. We got zero. 0 for 12. And then you look at the people's tax cuts that affect every single person in this room. Every single person in this room. No action. So should we go home? Should we go home early? 39 Democrats said no. They said no, we need to stay here and keep working. But Speaker Pelosi had another plan. Speaker Pelosi said we're going to go home because we need to save our jobs. Our representative sided with Speaker Pelosi again. Our representative voted with Speaker Pelosi and said it was time to go home. That's unacceptable.
He can stay home next year.
Yeah.
The new majority. Let me share with you the new majority. The new majority is going to be focused on growing the private sector economy. I'm going to be advocating strenuously that we do so in a very targeted fashion. We need to have tax and regulatory relief, and we need to repeal and replace the health care bill. These are the things that are going to get the private sector economy. We need to preserve the people's tax cuts of 01, 03. This is not the time to raise taxes. You know, and if you, some of you here may have done what I've done, you've read history, you know what happened to our country in 29. After the stock market crashed, we were going to have a recession. We were overextended on credit. We were going to have a recession. But you know, the government took action over that 2.5-year period that exacerbated the situation. In very quick form, let me tell you that initially, even though the Fed, you know, the Fed is widely maligned for its actions during the Depression, they actually got it right in the first few months. And they met in February of 1930, and they were pretty strident about this. They said, look, we get it, we're going to increase the money supply, we'll lower your interest rate 2 points, and then we're going to ride this thing out. We need to correct this economy. Right now it's ill-structured, we need to correct it, and we'll be fine. Well, what happened is there started to be some clamoring, right? And in the Congress, they started, let's have a tariff. Let's throw a tariff up. And despite the fact that, like last year, remember how many people wrote into the president, to our member of Congress, and said, don't vote for that health care bill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing was happening back then. They were writing to Hoover, and they said, don't sign that bill. Smoot-Hawley. Smoot-Hawley tariff bill doubled doubled the tax, which is, the tariff is a tax on imports, for 25,000 commodities. Now here's what happened. This happened in May. The Congress passed it. The President signed it in June of 1930. The business community immediately reacted. 20% of your stock market dropped. Bad reaction. The business community said this is not good. So that's a problem right there. Your stock market drops 20%. What I failed to mention to you is that in the period of February to April of 1930, the stock market rose. Okay, so when you hear about the stock market, some people say stock market crash caused the Depression. You need to read more. You need to read more. Stock market was actually climbing from February to April 1930. Past Smoot-Hawley, stock market goes down. Now when that happened is, from the Smoot-Hawley, is we got retaliation. Countries overseas retaliated on us for throwing that tariff up. Now when they threw up their tariffs, you know, and then Murphy got involved. I'm not talking about my opponent here. It was a bad drought. It was a bad drought in the summer of 1930. So now farmers dealing with a bad drought and now trying to sell goods overseas with this tariff in place and this trade war, we had a number of farms go under. When the farms went under, the community banks went under. And when the community banks went under, the federal government started to panic and said we need to crank up the spending. And then we had this huge unprecedented deficit in early spring 1931. I'm getting to my point. Here's the thing. When they had the huge deficit, they said, well, we're going to have to raise taxes now. We got this huge deficit. So in the Congress throughout the summer and the fall, they went through this drill, and they passed the largest peacetime tax increase in our country's history at that point, the Revenue Act of 32. The President signed it in December. So you'd say, well, at least we're going to have more receipts then. We'll have more revenues because we did this big tax increase. And of course, we'd be wrong. Revenues went from $2.1 billion in 1931 to $1.9 billion in 1932. Revenues fell. And we slid from a recession to a double-dip recession into a depression. We helped cause that with our intervention. These were bad decisions that we made. We should learn from that. See why I'm saying I don't make $250,000 a year. That's okay that we got love and discipline. We're happy at home. We're a happy family. We're self-actualized. I don't make that kind of money. But you know what? I know it's not smart to raise taxes right now. Because what I don't want to do is see all of us hurt because we lose more jobs. That's why I'm standing firm on the people's tax cuts. I want you to know that so that when you go out and tell your family and friends, because the opposition says, well, he loves the fat cats. He loves the rich guys, you know? Come on. I told you where I came from, where I grew up from. This is bad policy right now. We should not be doing that. Help me spread the word on that. Keep the people's tax cuts of 01 and 03.